Good evening, students. We will continue in this second video of head injury, and in the first video we have covered we have understood the term what does head injury means, and then we have tried to classify it into four categories: and minor head injury, major head injury. We have also discussed about skull fractures, discussed about Glasgow Coma Scale, and difference between contusion, laceration, and concussion. Then the term called loss of consciousness, that is lucid interval. These terms were introduced in the last video. Today we will, after completing the different type of injuries, we were discussing about the complications of head injury, where we were discussing about kind of hemorrhage. So we have studied about the EDH, that dural hemorrhage, and then we are studying now about subarachnoid hemorrhage, the second part. In the previous video, we have also discussed about the signs of increased intracranial pressure, and that is very important because these are typical signs we look around while examining. So let us start with the subarachnoid hemorrhage. It is the bleeding which occurs between the arachnoid and the pia mater, the second and the third layer. Arachnoid is the layer where we have vessels. As we have seen in the last video, there is a diagram which shows the vessels are there. Fine. So there is rupture of berry aneurysm. There is what does berry aneurysm mean? Berry is when the nerve, the arteries, they pop up just like a berry. So that is called as berry aneurysm. There is a rupturing of the berry aneurysm, trauma, fracture at the base of the skull, or if there is internal carotid aneurysm. Herein the clinical features will be worst headache will be there, explosive or throbbing headache is there, with followed by projectile vomiting and nausea feeling, with the decrease in loss of consciousness, or the person may go into coma, where there will be signs of meningeal irritation. What is the sign of meningeal irritation? Is Kernig sign, we say. There is a rigidity or stiffness of neck. The person will not be able to bend his neck. As soon as you passively move his neck, there will be a shock-like or a current-like feeling throughout the body. So that is kind of a meningeal irritation will be there. And if you see the space, you can see the scan, you can see the space, how it has been, this is seen, the CSF has been, spaces have been covered with the fluid, and this is the case in biconcave shape. It is biconcave shape. Fine. For the subarachnoid hemorrhage. Fine. The next is some important one is, these were outside in the layers of the brain. Now we have come into the inside, intracerebral hemorrhage. The second complications is the intracerebral hemorrhage. The intraaxial hemorrhage is a hemorrhage that occurs within the brain tissue, inside the brain. So it is of two types: intraparenchymal hemorrhage, that is, it extends into the brain parenchyma, and then intraventricular hemorrhage, which extends into the ventricles. We understand there are lateral ventricle, third ventricle, fourth ventricle, so it extends into the ventricular system. Now causes can be hypertensive vasculopathy. It can be because of ruptured aneurysm, ruptured arteries, or it can be because of trauma. Now there will be a rapidly progressive severe headache building over several minutes. Now in subarachnoid hemorrhage, as well as in acute, subacute and chronic, we have seen that it develops within 24 hours, then 24 to 72 hours. It may take up to days or up to months of injury. Here in this hemorrhage, that is in conditions here, you find that it is progressively developing within minutes. Fine. It is followed by focal neurological deficits, nausea, vomiting, and decreased level of consciousness. Fine. So the causes or the presentation will totally depend upon where this site of hemorrhage is. If it is basal ganglia or internal capsule, you understand that there will be presentation of hemiparesis. Cerebellum will be involved, then there will be chances of getting dysphagia. As well as ataxia and vertigo. Pons, understand cranial nerves are getting involved, so cranial nerve deficits will be there. And even cerebral cortex is involved, then we have typical hemiparesis, hemisensory loss, hemianopsias and dysphasias. Hemianopsias are visions, related to visions. Half side vision will be, there can be quadranopias or hemianopias. Half side vision will be lost, that is temporal or nasal side. One eye nasal side, the other side the temporal side vision will be lost, that is hemianopsia. Fine. Dysphagia, difficulty in swallowing. Fine. And hemisensory loss means one side of the body, half side of the body, there will be no sensations or there will be altered sensation. Fine. And hemiparesis, you understand, there will be weakness or paralysis of one side of the body. Fine. Ataxia is unsteady gait, that is will be there, and that is while walking, and the person will not, there will be difficulty or there will be disrupted step length. Every step length will be different. One will be small, one will be large. So the person who is walking with an ataxic gait will have a drunker sailor gait, as if he has been drunk. Fine. Vertigo will be that is things moving around. The person will be having, will complain of that all the things or the surrounding is moving. Fine. And you understand cranial nerve deficits. Cranial nerve deficits, depending upon the area involvement, third nerve, fourth nerve, facial nerve, trigeminal nerve, depending upon which cranial nerve effect is there, you will find the signs and symptoms. We will be going through this cranial nerve examination as well as in detail in another video. Okay, now this is one of the complication. Before we start with the diagnostic measure, there is a second complication which is very much important. Hemorrhage is the first complication. The second complication is herniation. We say it as herniation. I have already floated those some pics in the group itself. This is called as brain herniation. If you can see this, it is brain herniation, and in this image you can see there is some figures which have been shown: number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, or number A, B, C, D, E. Now the first one is here. This is basically, we say it as subfalcine cingulate. That is basically what is happening is this tissue is going supratentorially, it is moving, it is pressing the other, that is the brain is or the brain tissue is extending, and it is supratentorial cerebrum, it is pressing the other side. So what will happen in such condition is the person will be having headaches immediately, and then there will be of course contralaterally there will be paralysis. Fine. So and the reaction to the pupil will also be there. So it is in A. In this stage, this is going to happen. Clinically, we are going to see contralateral paralysis, as well as we are going to see is headaches, and the person is having a reactive pupil. Fine. The second is the B part. You can see this is also called as uncal, UNCAL, uncal herniation. It is basically when you can see the temporal lobe is pushed downwards and towards the posterior fossa. If you can see, the temporal lobe is pushed downwards towards the posterior fossa, and in this is called as the uncal herniation. And herein you can see contralateral hemiparesis will be there, and there will be, the term is decerebrate positioning will be there. Decerebrate. Now what does this mean? Is cerebrate means there will be extension of the neck, there will be extension of the arm, and internal rotation of the arm, making up of the fist, then extension of the whole body, extension of the knee, plantar flexion of the foot. The body itself will go into extensor posturing. Fine. So this is decerebrate kind of a posturing, which is we say it as a threatening condition wherein when brainstem involvement takes place, and it is a very danger sign when this kind of a positioning takes place. So this is called as uncle. We going for, you will find ipsilateral pupil dilatation, contralateral hemiparesis, and decerebrate positioning will happen when there is uncle herniation takes place. The next herniation is called as central herniation. You can see in figure C. This is figure C, and you are herein you will see that both side, it is not only one side, both side the cerebrum is descending down and is pressing the midbrain, pons and medulla. Whole brain is now diencephalon. It is just pressing and displacing the diencephalon and through this tentorial notch, and this is again the sign will be the presentation will be coma. The person will go into coma. There will be again fixed pupil herein, and there will be typical decorticate positioning. Corticate positioning is moving towards the core. Core is the arm will move towards the core. The arm will go into flexion and internal rotation and towards the chest, whereas the head will go into extension, the legs and the knees will be in the extended position, foot will be plantar flex, whereas the arm will be towards the core. This is called as decorticate positioning. Fine. And there is also another thing which is called as Kine-Stokes respiration. It takes place in this is the term which has been used where there is a pause in between the breathing. That is a long pause. Apnea is there. That is, there is the inspiration will takes place, expiration will takes place, and there is a long pause. That is called as a Kine-Stokes breathing takes place. So this is a typical sign or features which we find when there is a central kind of herniation. Bilaterally you can see it is descending downwards. Fine. So there will be a Kine-Stokes breathing will be there, decorticate kind of a positioning will be there, coma will be there, and there will be fixed pupil. The next image is D. This is the D image. You can see this is the D image. This is called as transtentorial ascending. Now here in B and C we were descending. There can be a condition where there can be ascending herniation, where you can see that the infratentorial mass is trying to protrude out and upwards. It is moving upwards, and there will be, the person will be in a stupor stage, and there will be headache and nausea and vomiting kind of feature will be there. Then another kind of a presentation is which we can see is E, where is called as tonsillar presentation. Herein you can see E. E is tonsillar presentation. You can see this is cerebellum. Cerebellar tonsils are projecting down through the foramen, and you can see herein they are projecting down and compressing the foramen magnum. So, and as well as the medulla. Here the presentation will be hypertension, bradycardia, that will be there, and there will be respiratory arrest will be there, and this is and there will be there will be decrease in blood output, there will be decrease in BP, there will be heart rate will also decrease in this condition. And the last one is the F1. Can you see? This is transcalvarine type. Herein you can see this is only happens in condition of penetrating head injuries. In that condition, the only symptoms we find is that there will be meningitis, or there will be any infection which will happen. The signs of infection of the brain will take place. So these are the type of herniation. So one of the complication we studied was hemorrhage, and we studied different kind of hemorrhage which were there. It can be within dura, within arachnoid mater, and within pia mater. We have seen the different kinds. It can be in the parenchyma, or it can be in the ventricles. So hemorrhage we studied 5 of them. These are 6. This the second complication is herniations, and because of the injury there can be herniations which can happen, and you can see herein the herniation is there. And what kind of a different kind herniations are there? We have seen uncal herniation, bilateral, central herniation, then we have seen tonsillar herniations. Okay, so these are all herniations which are the second complication of head injury. Fine. Now if we see to the diagnostic measures, we have to go in for detailed history collection, and which can be done by, though if the patient is not in a state of alertness, is not alert enough, so you can take the history and collect the information from the relatives or the person who is along with the patient. And physical examination should be done, as the examination, the important points we have already discussed in this, that what all signs and symptoms, depending upon what kind of a fracture it is having, or what kind of a contusion it is he is having, or whether he's having a hemorrhage, or whether he's having a case of herniation, the symptoms will change, signs and symptoms will change, his complaints will change, and we have to write it and examine it. Physical examination includes that. Then is of course CT and MRI imaging is very much important, which help us to tell which helps to identify the kind of bleed, or it helps us to identify the kind of injury it is there to the brain. So it determines the treatment, whether we will go for a conservative treatment or whether we will go for an surgical opinion. Fine. And of course there are x-rays are there, and PET scans are there. So we go in for these various diagnostic measures so that we can decide upon the treatment. So what all we take into in history taking is what kind of an injury he is having, that is mechanism of injury, how this occurred, it was a road traffic accident, whether it was a blow on her head, or whether it was a penetrating injury, or whether it was what kind of an injury it was. Okay? Then level of consciousness, whether an amnesia, level of consciousness of the person is very much important, whether the person was conscious enough after the injury, whether the person was conscious, or whether he lost his consciousness. Level of consciousness at scene and on transfer, this is also important, whether at scene and whether when he was being transported to the hospital, whether he was alert or not, or he lost his consciousness. Evidence of seizure, whether there was any fits during this procedure, or whether there was any history of vomiting, projectile vomiting, or headache, or any medical condition, pre-existing medical condition is there which need to be taken care of, and any medications such as anticoagulants is if the person taking, or any usage of any drugs or alcohol is there. So this kind of a history taking is very much important. Now what all in physical examination, just revising, you'll be basically going for Glasgow Coma Scale scores, and we run through those scores, and so that we know the level of alertness of a person, level of consciousness of a person. Pupil size and response is very much important. For the light and response, we see whether there is mydriasis, or that is there is constriction and dilatation of pupil in response to light is there or not. We basically see the size of the pupil. Okay? That is through direct and indirect method we see that. And then we see signs of skull fracture. We have already discussed about raccoon eyes, bilateral periorbital edemas, battle signs in cases of temporal fractures. We have seen that bruising over the mastoid bone, cerebrospinal fluid release from otorrhea, from eye, or from ear, or from nose, rhinorrhea. And then we have seen whether there is bleeding from the eardrum through the pressure, that is bulging of the tympanic membrane. We have to go in for the examination. And then of course full neurological examination, we see the tone of the person, power of the person, whether the power is there in the upper limb, lower limb, or facial examination. Then we check for the deep and superficial tendon reflexes. We check for the sensation, whether if the person is responding well. We also check for the deep and superficial deep and cortical sensation if the person is responding. Fine. And of course we have seen that the CT scan, we have tried to see during this discussion that kind of a CT scan, what we try to see how rapidly the hemorrhage or the blood is or the changes which is happening. They have been it helps in proper diagnosis and proper kind of a treatment. Fine. And these are a typical CT scan guidelines which are taken into account when to get a CT scan, when the person when a CT scan is required in cases of a head injury. So this is a certain guidelines which NICE has given to us, that if there is a neurological deficit, it says vomiting, if the person is complaining of seizures, if you are suspecting a skull fracture, if the GCS score is less than 13, then if it is less than 13 or 14, you need to go in for 2 hours. If the person is having coagulopathy, or if there is antegrade amnesia, that is if the person is not able to remember what happened to him. So then in that cases we go in for CT scan. Fine, we understand there are other mechanism. An X-ray should be done for any kind of cervical injury. MRI scan should be also be done. A Doppler, if you for the cerebral blood flow, we can go for that also. So management is positioning of the head 30 degree, and in neuro intensive care setting should be the person is best managed over there. And first is position the head to 30 degree. This is the first thing. Cervical spine need to be immobilized as soon as make sure that there is a collar is there and the head is tilted 30 degrees. So this is the immediate thing which is required. Then the second thing which is important is that is ABC, we say it as make sure the airway is open. That is in the case of the person has gone into coma, or whether you find that this person is not there's chances of going and there is loss of consciousness. So what you try to maintain is the airway need to be maintained so that the ventilation takes place. So you need to head need to be extended well, and the airway pathway should be open. Fine. And because in this condition there will be, you try to maintain the normal heart rate, as well as the pulse need to be maintained, as well as the breathing rate need to be maintained. And if the neck goes into flexion, there's chances of aspiration is also there. So and the next is important is there should not be cerebral perfusion pressure need to be maintained. As I told you, this is very much important. In head injury cases, this falls, and when the cerebral perfusion decreases, again our cerebral spinal fluid, the pressure inside the cranium also changes, and then there is this whole things that is the BP change, the cerebral perfusion pressure change. So we keep on looking for these pressures, systolic blood pressure as well as the cerebral perfusion pressure have direct relationship. So if this pressure need to be maintained, the cerebral perfusion pressure in head injury cases need to be maintained. If there is a change in the pressure, the kind of herniation or compression will be increased. Okay. So what is positioning of the head to 30 degree? Avoid obstruction to venous drainage from head, and muscle relaxants are given. Normal cap care, normal maintenance of the blood pressure as well as the heart rate need to be done. Seizure control need to be done. Normal temperature need to be maintained. Diuretics are given so that if there is excessive fluid accumulation, that can be drained, or the in order to maintain the pressure in intracranial pressure, we do all that is diuretics are given. And of course you understand osmotic diuretics, anticonvulsant, barbiturates and calcium channel blockers are basically given to maintain the vitals of in cases of head injury case. Now surgical intervention is or decompression is done when there is certain indications for that. In case when the GCS score is decreased by 2 or more points between the time of injury and hospital evaluation, and if the patient presents with fixed or dilated pupil, if the intracranial pressure exceeds 20 mm of mercury, that is the time we go in for a surgical decompression, where there are two methods, that is burr hole type, where the opening into the cranium is done with a drill, or craniotomy, the bone flap is temporarily removed from the skull to assess the brain. Fine. Craniectomy is excision of the cranium to cut away a bone flap, and cranioplasty is surgical repair of the defect and deformity of a skull takes place. These are the options which can be taken. And prevention measure is we need to give in for a prevention from car and motorcycle vehicle accidents. Safety helmets need to be, health promotion need to be done. Now role of rehabilitation plays a very important role, because ambulatory and home care, and if the person there is a different role of day-to-day nutrition requirement. If there is a person regarding education to the person as well as the family member is there, and PT plays a very crucial role, because it can be an IPD as well as after that in OPD. The rehabilitation takes it's a long journey, and PT plays a very crucial role in rehabilitating and making them back to the life again. So though this video is not meant to go in detail about the PT rehabilitation, I can go in for another video for in detail, covering in detail about the PT management. But I will like to end the video or end the topic regarding the head injury here only, wherein we have covered today we have tried to cover the complications of head injury, and which are two very major important is hemorrhage, as well as the second is the herniations. Fine, we have learned the terms called decerebrate and decorticate kind of positioning. We have heard the terms called tonsillar herniation, uncal herniations, and they are very much important. And we have heard about the surgical measures which we need to be taken, that is burr hole, craniectomy removal, and we have also seen the flap surgeries and this. And of course, what is important is maintenance of ABC, that is airway, breathing, and need to be an cardiac output, and of course maintenance of intracranial pressure need to be done, which can be do if the cerebral perfusion pressure is maintained and BP can be maintained, so the we can maintain the intracerebral pressure also. So I'm ending this video with this, and I hope that you will give me a feedback and give me your queries or questions in comments. Thank you.